Welcome to Burn the Rules with Chet Hirani. This podcast is for people who know leadership isn't about titles, noise, or ticking boxes. It's about how you think, how you show up, and how you perform when pressure is real. I'm Chet Hirani, and I work with leaders and high performers across business, sport, and life all over the world who want to take control of how they lead and perform. Not by copying someone else's rules, but by understanding themselves first. Every conversation here is grounded in experience, reflection, and practical insight. So if you're ready to question what leadership has been taught to be and decide what it means for you, you're in the right place. Most of how you're feeling at work right now, the self-doubt, the pressure, the sense that something's off is probably not your fault. That's not an excuse, that's neuroscience. Natalie Gleason is the VP of Human Capital at Pure Harvest Smart Farms, a company literally growing food in the desert in the UAE. She's also spent years working across luxury retail, mass market, and agri-tech. And what she's observed about how people behave under pressure and where that pressure actually comes from is one of the most useful and honest conversations we've had on this show. We get into the neuroscience of why your thinking brain switches off under stress, why calm is contagious, and so is chaos. The 3 capabilities no training program is teaching leaders, and the personal story that forged her entire philosophy of resourcefulness. An adoption journey that, in her own words, had her jumping through hoops before they lit them on fire. So let's get right into it. Hi, Natalie. How are you?
Great, thanks. How are you, Jed?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for being part of the show. I'm really excited to have you here with us and just talk about just you and all the amazing things that you've basically been up to. But before we go into all of this, tell me a little bit about what's been taking up your headspace this week and lately. What's been busy for you?
Well, obviously, we have a lot going on in the region, so that's been consuming a lot of space. And we
Yes.
focused on people first. So there's been a lot of connection, reaching out to people, checking on them, making sure that everybody's got the clarity that they need to be able to keep going, under the circumstances. So that's consumed a lot of time.
Wow. Wow. So, how has that all been so far? I mean, we hear a lot in media, and I think a lot of people are now understanding the fact that you don't actually necessarily should be believing everything that you believe and see and watch.
Yeah.
Apart from all the listeners that are listening and watching this podcast, so please do believe those sort of things, right? Anything out there, we've all come to me as well. I mean, I'm always on social media, just scrolling through the TikToks, the Insta stories, Reels, etc. You hear and see so many things because you've got a lot of AI generated things going on. But one thing I really have basically myself personally, I've been strict on it is that, look, I'm not political myself, but I'm not just going to believe in everything I read. I'm actually going to reach out to the people, check in on them who are in the region and just hear from them and just say, look, we're here for you too, right? We're all going to stand together in this situation. So tell me a little bit, how's it all been?
It's been, I think having a child, it puts a different perspective on it. Like if I was on my own, I think I would feel differently. But the minute you've got a family and somebody dependent on you, you
Mm,
become a lot more aware of what's happening around you. But in terms of kind of changes to day life, I mean, people are still going to the malls, people are still shopping, kids are on remote learning for a while, so that dynamics changed a bit. But, life is continuing. And I work in the food industry at the moment, so we produce locally. So from our sector, it's actually really busy because we're making sure that our produce is going, our employees are still out delivering on the roads. So not much changed other than, like I said, we are starting to identify sounds. And as our WhatsApp groups, we're listening to different things and people are, coming up with theories. But you always have to rely on the official channels. And I think that's what we're really good at doing as living in the UAE. We have a lot of really great channels that communicate what's happening around us. So you kind of know where, what's going on. And obviously we do get alerts if there's something that we should be paying attention to, and it's just to be inside rather than outside. So yeah, I mean, we're just carrying on.
yeah. I mean, that's the best thing you have to do, right? You just got to carry on. Yes, there are going to be uncertainties around everywhere, but we've just literally just got to carry on. And it's like, it almost feels like sometimes it's like the second sort of way, it's like another COVID type situation, right? And I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that. But just touching back, you said you're in the food industry,
Mhm.
and obviously this is going to be really sort of busy for you. You're a VP of human capital at a company, literally growing food in a desert. Okay. But before you even talk about leadership, that environment is a daily lesson in doing more than less with less, right? But what's working inside Pure Harvest in that sort of ecosystem done to how you think about people and the performance, especially from everything that you're experiencing? It's been busy, so lots of things have probably changed, or you've got to basically adapt, especially at this time. But overall, because I'm fascinated about the fact that when I read about what you do and thinking growing food in a desert. Okay, tell us about this.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's amazing. My happy place is being inside. We have these really big glass houses where we grow in, and I think when you think has a lot changed, not that much has changed. I think we've built resilience through COVID times. Pure Harvest was already operating at that time, so we had already built resilience. But working in a confined space like a glass house, where you're trying to be really efficient with resources like water and energy and things like that, we've kind of refined that process over the years that we've been operating. So that kind of mindset is just cascaded out, like cascaded across the business. So we all kind of have that already. We think about things in that way. How creative can you be with your thinking to solve problems? So it is a very busy time for us, just in terms of the fact that we would normally be busy at this time anyway, but it's even more busy now because we're producing and getting things to the shops a lot quicker. But I don't know, it's just it's a wonderful place to be. And I've told you this before, when you walk through our glass houses, it's actually a really peaceful experience because we have our own bees that pollinate the plants. When you're inside there, you actually feel like you're in a little bubble, and it's like all your troubles disappear and you just look at the beautiful fruit growing on, and you just enjoy what you have around you.
Sounds quite tranquil.
It is very tranquil. Yeah, I need to send
Can't
you some
wait to come and
photos of
visit.
our leafy greens, because that is just like a sea of green. It's very quiet and it's very peaceful.
I see it's a different contrast when you think about things in the Middle East and people just assume it's desert, right?
Yeah.
And it's just sand. But then when you've got places like this, which is almost like its own ecosystem, it does sound very tranquil. I mean, I'd love to see the pictures, but I mean, one day I'm sure I will be coming and having a look and walking through there. And I probably won't even leave, to be honest, if I'm coming into there. Just find a little corner for myself there.
Yeah. No, we'd be more than happy to walk you through and show you everything. Because I think more people should see it. But we have a lot of hygiene protocols, so it's sort of we have a lot of restricted mobility in there. But we're
Yeah.
trying to make it a little bit more accessible for people, because I think seeing it will make a difference. So people understand that kind of farm to table experience.
So, as the VP of human capital in this sort of area, you've been doing this for many, many years. What pressure do people not see when they look at your position?
I think it's the volume of connection and communication that goes into a role, especially when you want to have authentic, communication with people. It's not like just blanket emails that go out, but actually build time and build connection with people through investing in time. And I think sometimes people don't see that. They'll just think, oh, you're doing admin, or you're doing a big town hall, or you're doing, something else, bigger things. But it's all those small little interactions that happen that actually I feel a lot of personal pressure to make sure that I make time for those things. I try and push things and squeeze things in, but I want to have opportunities to communicate people, listen to them, talk to them, ask, and really, when I say ask them how they are, really understand and listen to what they say when they answer back, so that you develop those relationships with people. So the pressure is there in terms of not having enough hours in the day to do the amount of those kind of things that I'd like to do.
I mean, I can imagine how demanding that is. With that being said, then you've obviously have expectations of yourself, right? So, what expectations do you place on yourself that others potentially don't even notice?
Well, I mean, I'm like everybody. I want to make sure that I'm doing a great job, and that's not just for the people that are, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Not just the people that you consistently hear about, but the people that are not making an effort to reach out. And the pressure I put on myself is to make sure that I reach out specifically to those people, and that we capture the thoughts and feelings of everybody, not just where we think there may be something. So my pressure is to try and be as consistent across all the groups, make sure we communicate across everyone. It's equal and fair and transparent. And I really want to make sure that that happens every time.
Yeah. I mean, I think people generally have a misconception of anybody that's in the human resource, human capital sort of sector, especially in businesses. Can you give us a little bit of an understanding and the differentiation between that? Because it's an education piece, and I think it's good that people hear and watch this as well from your perspective. Purely being in such a in this environment for many years, but I've come from a corporate environment, but I always had this misconception of HR, and then you've got people officers. Can you please differentiate this for our listeners and our viewers as well? Because I think it's something that's really needs to be said and aired and shouted about a little bit more, because you go through a lot, right? And it's not just generally people that you need to deal with. You're actually dealing with the business as a whole as well. So could you please give us a summary on that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like you said, I've been doing this for a long time and I've seen different variations. But I think what I want people to understand is that all of those parts that you spoke about, the people officers, the, admin people, all of those are part of human capital. Every element of those work together to generate a human capital department. So they're all important, but that's not the only thing that we do. We're not just transactions. We're not just administration. We're not just those things. And if you want to really push human capital forward, you have to have a seat at the table. You have to be in the board meetings. You have to be able to contribute and understand how our ability as human capital to support capability, and this is what's important, to support capability and the delivery of what our business is trying to achieve is so important. And we can, if we work collaboratively with the teams, we kind of pulling the best description I have is somebody asked me what is a human capital, and I said to them, well, when you see an org chart, we're the white space, right? We're the white space. We're all over in between all of those things, trying to make sure that all the dots connect and make sure that the organization has the capability to deliver what its key objectives is. So my KPIs are the same KPIs that our CFO has and that our chief grower has, in terms of those top level financial KPIs. Those are mine as well. I'm equally responsible for them. So it's not just, managing turnover and making sure that people's employee files are up to date, but it's actually being accountable at the top level for how the business delivers.
That's I wouldn't have known that. Yeah. And the fact that how you've just basically broke that and summarized it just goes to show that how much more responsibility human capital actually have. And it's not just a human resource aspect of things. There is so much. And the fact that you have the same sort of KPIs as the execs from that, you are basically an exec level in that, within organizations there. So that's
Yeah.
really important to actually for everybody to kind of understand that, because it's not. I don't see it as often explained, because you see a lot of information around sort of human capital and the people aspects of things, but you never really hear and see about the business aspect of things, which I think is fundamental, because business still needs to be there for the people to also be part of as well, right? So it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. And thank you for that. So you said that the rule you stopped following is that you need more. So, sorry, you need more and more time, more people, more budget before you can move. Yeah. Where did that rule come from in the first place? Who taught you that?
I mean, I have felt it for a long time, but I didn't always act on it. I think, I'm a lot about resourcefulness, and I'm sure we'll go into that a bit later, but I am a resourceful person by nature. I will always strive to find alternative options and be really creative. And so there were things that when you were doing projects at work, and all of a sudden you'll say, oh, we can't launch this right now because we're only 2 people. We don't have the right system. We don't have this. And then you go through that cycle of putting things off because you're waiting for everything to be perfect before you act. And then at some point you just get to the point where you can't do that. You can't wait. You have to just use what you have and get it going, and then you build as you go. And so that's kind of the philosophy that I have. I don't wait for perfect. I also, because I'm very careful about budgets and things like that within the business, I'm also cost conscious. So I work and create a lot of things myself, right? So you have to just work with what you've got. And so that rule had to be burnt so that I could
Yeah.
continue.
Did you, by understanding that, was there a time where you realized that this isn't the right way of doing things for yourself? Can you take us back to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a work environment, it was a lot to do with, really pushing forward on the capability front, that what I was talking about from capability. And and for me personally, I always saying, pushing my agenda and being a little bit more vocal inside those, management meetings, etc., because I didn't feel that I had, you know, all of everything that I needed to launch a capability program or to launch, that's the best example, but any project. And
Mm,
I kept feeling like I was shrinking away a little bit in some of those meetings, where I would have an opinion, but I wouldn't say it because I was not sure how it would land, or if people would take it in the way that I intended it, because it wasn't perfect, and I was waiting for everything to be perfect so that I could present it. But then I could just see myself disappearing slowly and slowly, getting not on purpose, but coming away from the table that I was pushing so hard to sit at. And then that night, you sort of an epiphany, like you don't have to wait for a perfect. It doesn't matter. What have you seen anybody present anything that's perfect? And the answer was no. They just presented it. I was trying to make it perfect, and that is not something that you need to wait for. So I launched Pure Positive. It's something that I launched in Pure Harvest about a year ago, and I waited too long. My learning from that is I waited too long to launch that, because I was waiting for the logo to look exactly right. I was waiting for, too many things to be perfect before, because it's not about the logo. It's about
mm,
the impact that it has on people. But that's just an
yeah.
example. I was obsessing about something so small, and you don't need to.
So easy to fall into that trap though, right? As much as we try and say, don't do it, don't do it. I mean, I've done it, and to a point where you realize eventually, and then you think, hold on, how long have I actually spent in redesigning this logo, or talking, or just thinking about a new name, or is this the right name for it? It's like sometimes you just have to just throw yourself into the deep end and do it, because you've already got the backing, which is the most important thing. Everything else can come into it, which is important, because when we talk about situations like this, when you create an initiative internally and within the company, it's like when you're starting a business. Some people, and the idea is, I mean, like, you want to create a product where you know that it's going to solve people's issues for them and what they're talking about, and not necessarily it's going to be a product that you think that it's the best product in the world, because usually that's not the case, because
Yeah,
what you think is the best product in the world won't be what everybody else out there in the world needs, and you need to basically serve them first before you're serving yourself, right? And but we get ourselves hung up so much on these things, where you think, you know what, this is when we realize that when we say you need more time, you need more this, more that, it's like, well, maybe you need to reprioritize a little bit. But it's not a magic, there's no sort of magic pill or an answer for it all.
no,
Everybody does go through it. It's just a human thing.
it's also, I mean, I think obsessing about the logo for me is
Yeah.
one thing, because I wanted it to be perfect, and I wanted it to withstand time. Like I wanted this to be something that would launch and then it would be able to stay.
Mm,
But
mm.
it's also you have this fear of failure, right? And you'll find anything to be able to hide behind and say, okay, I'm going to delay because what happens if it falls flat, or whatever, whatever. So, oh, yeah, it's definitely a battle that we have to fight against in ourselves
Yeah.
to, take the plunge.
It is. And the thing is, it's okay to rebrand. It's okay to make adjustments. It's okay to make changes. It's absolutely fine. That's the whole purpose of learning from it all, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah, I've done that countless number of times, where I've changed names of companies, names or logos or taglines, anything. It's just check, just learn, just do it, and then
move
move on
on.
and
Yeah,
come back to it. Yeah. So you shifted from believing better outcomes come from better planning to believing they come from better thinking. That's not a
yeah,
small shift. Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
What happened to make you change your mind and believe that way?
I mean, it's a little bit about what we were saying now about, putting so much effort into the beginning, and then we do that every year with business planning, right? You do it every year. You try and make a great business plan and predict exactly what's going to happen through the year. Yes, and you anticipate a certain amount of ups and downs, but you always say that's going to be a slight change. You always say there'll be a slight change to my business plan. And that's never the case, right? It's never the case. I mean, I've seen that over and over and over every year, particularly in this industry. It's a very fluid industry, actually. And in retail. I was in retail before that. So yes, I realized then that making a plan or doing a budget or whatever whatever your plan is, whatever you use as the plan word, is such a small part actually of being able to adapt and change as you need. Because I think adaptability is probably one of the most critical skill capabilities that leaders need now. I think leaders need three capabilities. One is emotional intelligence, one is adaptability, and one is resourcefulness. But adaptability comes with this get on with it. And then as you're going through where you want to end, which you just need to know kind of what you're looking for to end, how do you get there? You navigate that as you go. So you think as you move.
Oh, that's powerful. Can you just repeat those three elements that you mentioned again, just so we're aware
Yeah.
of that?
So I've taglined them the future ready set. And basically it's three capabilities that I think make leaders better. And they're not things that need to be taught in theory. They need to be taught in practice. And it's emotional intelligence. So how you manage yourself and how you manage others. Adaptability. So that's that think while you're moving, and get things done. And then resourcefulness. And it's not about asking, what don't I have to be able to get there? It's like, what do I have and I'm not using to be able to get this completed? So those are the three leadership capabilities that I think are critical in the time now with AI, with tensions and the region, etc. Those are the things we need.
So true. I mean, we touch on AI, a huge well, God, I don't even know what the word to say about it, whether it's a huge what. It's just a huge topic, huge element,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. It's just everywhere. And it is something where these three capabilities sort of come into it. And I will include these on the actual show notes for everybody to sort of
Thank you.
take note of. And you can always get in contact with Natalie as well. I'm sure she'll be open to actually speak more about these things.
100%. I get on a soapbox and be prepared.
Exactly.
I'm quite passionate about
Yeah,
those
we
things.
can probably create a whole new sort of string of episodes for these three capabilities, right?
They're
So
important.
that being said, we mentioned about sort of the rules that you sort of stopped following, but what's one rule you've burnt for yourself, okay, whether it's personally or professionally, and realized you are now in total control after you've burnt it?
It's just, I guess it's opinions of others, like really worrying about what other people think. Because it's not a rule, but it's a sort of unsaid rule that the perception is reality, and that's great. But I've really filtered out. You filter out what you don't want to hear and just let that go. And if you believe passionately about the things that you think are important for people, and believe are important for people, then nothing should hold you back about talking about that. Not fear, not other people's opinions. You should be talking about what's important. And it's not an easy kind of unsaid rule to burn, because I think deep down in our psyches we have those feelings, but you have to just let it go. And now I'm less. I say what I think. I'm not afraid to say what I think about it. And if people don't like it, I respect their opinions. I welcome to hear be challenged about things. I like to have open and honest conversations and not just stick to a script that this is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it is important. And that's, you hit something, you hit the nail on the head there for me, and especially when you said that you say what you think, but you then also respect their opinions too. Because I was having a conversation, in fact, I was having a conversation with my daughter, right? And, she's like, well, if someone asks me something, I'm just going to just tell them what I think, right? And I was like, okay, that's fair enough. But what about what they feel and how and what they think from that perspective? And her, for instance, response is like, oh, I didn't think about that. Now, bearing in mind, okay, she's 14 years old, so she's learning as well. Like, we're all still learning. But it got to a point where she realized, thinking, maybe I do need to sort of respect what they say too, but it still doesn't matter. And she said this to me. She goes, but it still doesn't matter. I'm just telling them what I think. I was like, okay, we can have an argument over this one, right?
Yeah,
But the fact that she realized after, she came back and she's actually said, she's like, you know what? Yeah, it is a matter of respecting their opinions too. But she still had to say this, but I still feel that I need to make sure, right,
but
that
that's a
I
good
need to
thing.
let them know what I think. Exactly. I thought
That's
this
amazing.
fantastic. I was like, we've learned something, is a breakthrough here. But I said, just remember these. And she's like, yep, 100% she'll remember it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's these are important skills. I mean, even these three capabilities that I spoke about, I said that they shouldn't be taught in theory. They should be taught. You should learn them through experience and by habits, right? It's your habits that get reinforced. But
Yeah.
these are skills that our kids need, right? If you think about what's coming in the future for them with AI and what the way of the world will be in the future, they need to have those three skills. And that adaptability piece means having your opinion, and respecting others and being challenged and maybe having to change your opinion. Maybe that doesn't happen very often, but you have to be prepared for all of those things, right? And that's that back and forth. But our kids need to learn those capabilities. It's important for them for their future.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, they don't get taught this in schools, but this is for us as parents and leaders in that respect too, right? To sort of help and guide them along the way too. But it's funny because when I've said something to my daughter, I'm going back to this very similar to what we just said, and she said to me, she goes, "They don't teach us this in school." And I was like, "Well, I know they don't teach you this in school. This is why I'm teaching you this here, right?" And then she was like, "But what if now I can take what you've just said and actually go to school and say, well, you don't teach this in school. I don't believe this. I'm actually saying how I feel. And how are they going to," she said, "how are they going to basically respond to that?" I said, "Well, there's a boundary here. Okay. So you got to understand why you're actually going to school for the
Yeah.
education purpose, what they're teaching you. But what we're teaching you here is not necessarily when we say they don't teach you this in school, it's not forcing the schools to teach you. It's for you to then take this also along with you as well. That's why the whole purpose of what we say is always continuous learning.
Yeah.
That's the whole process behind it. You don't stop when you leave school, for example, you continue learning. And yeah, I mean, I've got to hold my hands up to certain things as well to say that there are moments where I've said that what I'm doing now out in the world here, they never taught me this in school. When I did my degree,
Yeah.
I'm not applying anything that my degree taught me. But then I look back and I think, actually that's a lie, because there are things that I have learned and what I'm doing. So there is a link somewhere. There is never a broken link in that respect, because that's what's led you to where you're being. It's just to give them that sort of practice and that sort of theory behind it is important.
Yeah. No, and that's what parents do. And the discipline that comes from being at school is, that helps you. That will help you in learning all of these other things, and applying yourself to whatever you have in front of you.
So I'm going to go back a little bit, Natalie, and
Yeah.
talk about sort of, you mentioned about pressure before.
Yeah.
You work, you've worked, and you are involved heavily in sort of neuroscience and occupational psychology. When you're in it, real pressure, there's no sort of theory behind all of these sort of things. But what's actually happening in the brain? Can you tell us that leaders actually get wrong with when these things come into play?
Yeah, I mean, our brains are constantly searching for threats, right? It's like human nature. It's for survival. We're constantly looking for opportunities to see threat. But what happens, and I've seen a lot of this recently, right? How different people respond to feeling pressure, and it's easy to talk about the pressure now as intention, but it could be work pressure or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're constantly scanning for threats, and then when you see a threat, or when your brain feels a threat, you goes into that fight or flight mode, and your amygdala kicks off, and you start not thinking clearly because your prefrontal cortex slows down, right? Your brain is diverting blood and oxygen away from areas that it doesn't think it needs. And what if that is actually your thinking brain, which is counterintuitive, but it is what happens. And then you really see what people's behaviors are like. And that's when the true kind of, when you're in that pressure, when you're not thinking as clearly as you would normally think. And then you look at people's behaviors. And some people in this recent sort of tension that's happened, some people will just be very quiet and be very reactive in terms of, waiting for things to be laid out, waiting for to get information to decide what's happening. And then you'll have other people that just take things in their stride, and they're like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what's available to us. This is how we're going to fix it. And they immediately go into, how do we get through this? And so that's where you see different capabilities coming out, right? And that's the differentiator. And one of the things I wanted to do to say is, we always say that things like calm is contagious. So when you, as a leader, when you're in an environment and you're talking to people, especially I've had to do this a lot recently, where you're talking to people that are feeling very sensitive, they're on edge, they're listening to what I'm saying, but they're also reading me. They're reading the sound of my voice, the tone, how I'm speaking to them, my facial expressions. They're reading everything about me. And if they sense that I'm stressed, I'm worried, it's contagious, right? It'll pass to the next person, it'll pass to the next. As calm is contagious, chaos is also contagious. And as leaders, you have to be super aware of how you're communicating with people. So pressure has a wonderful way of exposing and showing what people's behaviors are like under pressure. And now that once you have that, the opportunity comes, and this is where there's a coaching opportunity for me, where you can say, You just need to be made aware. The person needs to be made aware that this happened. This is the scenario and this is the impact that you have. And through building habits and practicing, you can manage to bring that back under control and then spread calm and not chaos.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It is. It's also like transmitting energy, right? Is
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
you transmit things. Okay. So it's very, and it's again, my next question would have been is basically like what signals tell you you're losing control mentally or emotionally from
Yeah.
that perspective, and it is energetic from that side. But are there any specific sort of signals that you sort of can sort of find or can tell people, listeners and other people are watching, of what they should be able to sort of identify when these sort of pressure situations can arise?
I mean, I think there's a couple of things, but I mean, one, you physiologically can feel, is your heart racing? Is your breath shorter? Like, are you
Yeah.
physically feeling the pressure? Because you need to listen to that, and then you need to do, something to bring that back under control. And there's a lot of ways of doing that. There's different types of breathing exercises. There's the physiological side. You need to have a couple of tools available to you for you first to bring yourself back to a center. And then you also need to look, you need to be looking at what's happening around you and see, for me, in a work environment, leaders need to see what's happening in their teams, because they're mirroring what you're doing. So you just need to look at them and say, okay, is everybody calm? Is everybody acting, chaotic? And then understand that your influence is somewhere in there, and you need to do something about it. I also think that there's also an opportunity for people to pull away and to not reach out and just to sort of disappear into the background, because it's easier not to be seen, and things are a little bit chaotic, so I'm just going to be quiet. And if you see yourself going into that mode, it's like, okay, I need to take a deep breath and then reach out to somebody, and maybe not the best leader right now, but I'm going to lean on somebody else. And that's a great leadership quality. If you're not feeling really great and you're getting support from people and you're asking for help, that's the sign of a great leader.
Yeah, I found that when you just said about sort of feeling like you're going silent and going back in the corner, it kind of triggered something to me because that actually happened to me early on in my career as well. It's because when you're sort of progressing, and I started behaving that way because of the mirror effect of the other leaders as well, and it kind of like put me in a situation where my voice wasn't being heard,
Yeah.
or my ideas aren't coming across. And when, because of that was happening, then I was getting, and all I was listening to were questions about, Chet, why haven't you done this? Why isn't this being created? Or why isn't this being delivered? And then the inside voice of me is saying that, have I done something wrong here? Because I feel like I'm being victimized over this. So then I just push myself in the corner. I don't say anything, but it actually wasn't me. Okay, it was actually the leaders. So when I started realizing that, and only then did I realize that, is when you said, when I reached out to somebody and explained the situation, that they were able to sort of break this all down to say, look, actually, you know what, it's not you. There are elements which are you, of course, right? But majority of how you're feeling is not led by you. It's led by the people that are leading you. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, didn't realize that at all, and I discovered that such early on in my career. But it's such an easy thing again, right? It's easy to sort of forget and not realize, because we start blaming ourselves and thinking, am I good enough? And the doubting, all these doubts start coming in, where it's like, hold on a minute, you didn't really need to do any of this, because most of it is probably not your fault.
Yeah.
Maybe the responsibility side is probably you, which you have to act on and do something about. But whoever's created it, whoever's triggered this feeling, is not necessarily down to you.
No. Isn't and that perspective's amazing, right? Having perspective where somebody just highlights something to you because you couldn't see it. You're too deep in and you can't see it.
It is. And I mean, the feeling behind it all is like that relief of pressure when you realize that.
Amazing.
It's a great feeling. Okay. It's like
Amazing.
when the saying of like pressure just being sort of lifted off your shoulders, it literally is like that, and probably more, because it can lead to so many things. That's interesting. So I want to sort of go back to a little bit about your future ready framework. Okay. And this is the three capabilities. So they're abbreviated. Okay, we'll put them on the show notes, but I'll have them as EQ, AQ, and RQ. So
Yeah.
people understand and know that too. But when you're under real pressure, which of these three actually shows up first for you?
It'll be the EQ. EQ shows
Yeah.
up first because it's the ability to connect. I think when you're under pressure, and if I just stick with the current example, the ability to manage my own emotions is
Yeah.
critically important. That's where everything starts.
Yeah.
So when you have pressure, you first think about that. Then you come up with you use resourcefulness to come up with a plan. And then your adaptability is how you get to that action sort of, let's just get it done. But you start with EQ.
Nice, nice, and then you can work through it from there. So really, it's really interesting because I mean, we do have a lot of. I mean, there's many frameworks out that are intentional in their work and they're broken down, but this one in particular, as obviously, it's always caught my attention as well, and it's something that I always wanted to sort of ask you personally too. Is that which one triggers and which one do you actually realize and notice first? So it's definitely EQ, which are all emotional aspects of things. So I appreciate you. Thank you for that. So next, moving on from everything that we've basically discussed, because we
Yeah.
can talk a lot about all of these sort of this framework of yours, the future ready framework. But I want to sort of dive a little bit deeper inside you as a leader. Okay. So Natalie, you mentioned growing up and afraid to fail. Yeah. So you mentioned about sort of failure
Hmm.
earlier on. And someone who was afraid to fail, becoming someone who now coaches leaders to move, obviously without the perfect conditions, for example, and we spoke about that earlier on. And that's a big arc, right? But what did that shift actually look like for you personally?
Okay. I maybe get emotional, but I will talk you through there was sort of me personally, what was a big changing point. So I grew up always wanting to be a mother, right? I always wanted to be a mom. And um, I found out sort of in my mid-30s that that was just not going to be something that was possible. I tried all the options available, the sort of traditional ways that people talk about, or you can just do IVF, or you can just do this. I tried all of those options, and they didn't work. And I kind of hit a wall, like you hit a wall, and it's like, there's nothing else you can do. You're stuck. You can't move forward. And I found myself thinking that, I shouldn't be restricted by that. What else can I do? What's next for me? I must be able to find something else. And I went through this. I think the resourcefulness is something that I told you I've had it since I was young. So it was like there has to be another way. I have to keep looking, and it was very difficult. And I continued to look and look and look. And I decided that adoption was a way to go. And then obviously in the UAE, that's not the easiest thing to go through. Sort of 3 countries would be involved, and it would be difficult. And I met a lot of people because being resourceful, I was like, I'm going to reach out to the network. I'm going to find a community of people, and I'm going to start trying to get some support. And I spent a lot of time in group sessions, and people were like, no, you really don't want to do it because the chance of failure, of going through these processes is exceptionally high. Go through, do everything 100% right, and at the last minute, the process can fail. And so it was more about a discussion of process failure, but because it was so close to my heart, it would be me. I would be failure to become a mom, failure to be able to do what I believe I was put on this earth to do, which is to raise a child. It was then that I really started to feel myself digging my heels in and not really worrying about the fact that there may be failure. It was like, okay, if it fails, I'll try another way. Like they're coming to this conclusion that I'm going to do it. It might take longer, but I will find a way to do it. And it was like, it started to build and build and build until it became this thing on its own. Like, I will do this. And it was many years. It did take a long time. And the process was difficult. I always say, they made me jump through hoops, and then they lit those hoops on fire and asked me to jump through them again. And it
Wow.
was so an exceptionally challenging time. But then obviously I was blessed with the most wonderful daughter that I have now, and I'm grateful for that. But that process taught me that you don't have to worry about failure. Failure is, something will fail. You just have to figure out and be resilient enough to say, I'll come back and I'll ask, what do I do now? What's next? What's my next step? And just keep going through that process. And yeah, after that, now I feel I can do whatever I want.
That's a lot, right? Obviously to be able to sort of go through what you've gone through, to sort of go through it personally, and I can relate in that respect too. Is that, I mean, I found out probably around about a similar sort of age time for myself that, you know what, having children as for yourself is not an option. And I was like, whoa, okay. And that was almost like, hold on a minute, how on earth, why is somebody or something allowed to take that away from me? And then you start kind of blaming yourself during those moments,
Yeah, of
and
course.
you go through some real dark times during that process. But when I look back at it, I don't think I'd have it any other way because I've learned so much from that point. And when we hear about when people say they've gone through so many, like going through dark times and they've come through it and then what they've learned from it and who they've become, sometimes you really have to go through that. And then you go through that when it's least expected
Mm.
and you're not in control of the situation at all because something's been taken away from you. And nobody understands it. Only the people that understand it are potentially the people who have obviously gone through it.
Yeah.
Okay. And that could be a point of where you could reach out to people that have gone through these situations. But again, you want to kind of like, well, you're experiencing it, but you also want to do things on your own a little bit as well before reaching out in that situation. And then the next step is to reach out to people who can actually who have gone through it. But what you kind of go through and what I went through from that perspective, honestly learned so much, and it is about the failure aspect of things, because even if there is something that you feel like you're going to fail, it's like, well, look, let me go head on and actually experience the failure and then realize, what did I learn from it? Because I know next time I'm not going to do that. But there's always going to be something out of it that you're going to appreciate, you're going to learn from. You, on the other hand, decided to take the adoption route, and look what it's all turned out to be. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Absolutely amazing. And then you've got a huge support, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm very blessed to have a great support network, and um, yeah, it worked out well. And I'm grateful for those moments when I felt so sad that a process had failed, or so there was a loss, or something along those lines. I look back at those now, and I feel grateful for the experience, and because if I hadn't gone through all of those experiences, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have this amazing 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old in my life who is an absolute blessing, who is an
Yeah.
absolute, absolute blessing. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for those. I'm grateful for those experiences. At the time, like you said, they are earth shattering. They feel like the worst things ever, and being able to pull yourself up after that, it can take time. It can, I had moments of being, a couple of days on the couch, feeling very sorry for myself. But, being able to bounce back and just keep putting one foot in front of the other, it's an experience that I'm grateful I had.
Yeah. And sitting on that couch and just having moments to yourself is actually not bad either. It's actually
Not a
quite
bad.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say to Darian, when we talk, we should feel all the emotions. You have to feel them. Part of being emotionally intelligent isn't saying that I'm never going to feel those things. It's all about feeling them and then letting them go. And that's a skill you have to learn. And this is another thing that I think our children need to learn how to do. They have to be able to feel it, cry, be angry, whatever it is, feel it and then let it go so that it doesn't hold you back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful. It's very true. So thank you for sharing that. You've also, just going back into your sort of, to your experience,
Hmm.
because you've worked in luxury for the likes of Tiffany, as retail outlets, with like 250 plus stores across the GCC, and now obviously in agri-tech in the desert. I want to just highlight that again. But three very different pressure environments, very, very different. But what pattern about how leaders behave under pressure stayed consistent across all these three? Or was there any?
They're all the same. I mean,
Yeah.
and the people pressure is more or less the same.
Yeah.
One of the things I've changed industries a few times, and um, the people aspect remains the same. Yes, there's slight differences in kind of working environment.
Yeah. True, true. And is there a specific pattern that you still have to watch in yourself? Yeah. So true. So true. You said resourcefulness is about starting with what you have and finding a way through. But what does that actually look like in practice? What's the first move that somebody should take or you take? Now that sounds like it's turning into not just an idea, but a fairly impactful project as well, right? Yeah, it's good. It's good. It does sound like, and really, really, really interested and would be happy sort of to know more about this at a later stage as well. Maybe come on and just talk about it as well, about your whole sort of initiative there. That would be amazing. So, so what's one move the person listening can make this week to start leading more resourcefully right now with what they have? Hmm. That's so cool. Yeah, especially when I use the analogy quite often as well when you unlock something and it locks something else. But it's more of like just looking at all the mechanisms inside and how everything just one piece fits together and it just opens this whole new box for yourself as well. No, so thank you for that. That's really, really helpful. Right. So before we wrap up, I'm gonna play a quick game called 10 and Done. Yeah. So this will be 10 questions, short answers, no thinking, whatever comes straight. The first thing that comes to mind. Okay. So are you ready? So what's your most used phrase at work? What's a habit you've kept for years? I have a couple of them before in the morning, to be honest. What's one thing you're irrationally strict about? What's your go to reset after a long day? Yeah, you mentioned that a few times. It's always envious. What's a book you've gifted more than once? Ah, fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. That's brilliant. What's a tool or app you'd hate to lose? Yeah. Yeah, there's. I'll recommend you some new ones as well. What's your most underrated skill? See? Yeah. Yeah. What's something people often get wrong about you? Definitely not. You are very much about people. What's a small luxury you ah, huge chocolate lover myself. What's one thing you're looking forward to in the next 90 days? I love that. Love that. That's 10 and done. All right, Natalie, where can people find you and connect with you? Mhm. Yes, yeah. She will be expanding to Insta. I will making sure of that too. And what's one thing you want people to take from this conversation? There you go. There you go. Yep, the future ready framework. Thank you so much, Natalie, for being part of the show here with Burn the Rules. It's been a pleasure having you. And that's a wrap. Before you go, take a moment to think about what stayed with you from this conversation. Not what sounded impressive, but what challenged how you think, decide, or lead. See, leadership isn't something you wait for, it's something you practice internally, daily, and deliberately. And remember this, you can't lead a life that matters by following rules that don't. If this episode gave you perspective, share it with someone who's ready to take more control of how they lead and perform. And subscribe wherever you listen and keep redefining leadership on your own terms.